I don't like the word peak, because if I were to say that I'm at a peak, then that inclines that it's downhill from here. So I consciously try to stay away from that word in regarding my own life. And I've heard friends say that. Like, I had a good friend of mine. He used to say, "I'm peaking right now." And I said, "Hey man, why are you saying you're peaking? Because that means it's all downhill. Like, don't say you're peaking. Like, I like to have this perspective. Like, it only continues to get better and better from here." Welcome to King Moves. In chess, the king moves one step at a time, but that single move can change everything. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and simple actions that could lead to the next breakthrough in your business and life. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa. Entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures as we think out loud, challenge assumptions, and uncover the small moves that create big momentum. Welcome to King Moves. Let's start the conversation.
So, Justin, we have recorded and published over 140 episodes of King Moves, which is hard to believe. Wow, time goes fast. And I was looking at our website description the other day and making a few tweaks and updates to it, as one should do periodically. And I realized that when we started this podcast, one of the things that really stood out is the contrast in our lives. Not only do we live in completely different countries, backgrounds, races, but when we started this podcast, you were the single guy. I was the married guy with a family. And now look at this. Now you're married with a family. Look how fast that changed. And I thought about it because we had Harrison make a guest appearance on here in one of our previous episodes, which was amazing to see. So if you haven't checked out that episode, go check it out on our YouTube so you can see this handsome little bundle of joy that is Justin's son. And I was like, wow, man, life can change so quickly. And I just wanted to bring up, I don't know if you made that same observation in the time that we've been recording this podcast together, but I wanted to bring that up to you and see your thoughts on that.
I think I often think about it. I mean, it's interesting how, well, but let me reflect that back onto you and maybe ask you a question. Is there a year of your life that you would describe as a big year, a moving year, a year where a lot of things fell into place or a lot of things happened? Or did everything kind of just happen over time and it was pretty spaced out? Or does a year stand out for you?
Maybe that's a hard one. Like 1 year. If I think back to like maybe 2022, a lot of things started to kind of fall in place. That's when I published my first book, Wealth Beyond Money. Yeah. And I felt like things really started to fall in place then with my speaking career. I got a lot more clarity in life. Started launching some other programs. I mean, if I had to pick 1 year that really boosted momentum, it would probably be 2022.
Yeah. It's interesting, and thanks for sharing that. That's 2025 was a weird and wonderful year in so many ways, and it's an interesting topic to actually dive into, and I'll list a few of the things off. But it started in late 2024 because I exited a business that I was a partner in at the end of 2024. To give myself some space. A big believer, in order to pick something up, you've got to put something down. So to create space and opportunity for new things to flow into your life. And then I was quite intentional with the way that I went into 2025. The beginning of 2025, I ran my 10 marathons in 10 days. That was in February. Turned 40 as well that year. So that was I don't know. And 40 has been an interesting age. It felt like a maturing and just from a personal point of view. I went to Chamonix, so I went skiing for the first time in my life. I'd never been skiing, so did a couple of weeks in Chamonix in France. Got engaged, got pregnant, had a shoulder operation.
You got pregnant?
Bought a house.
First man to ever do that.
Well, anything is possible these days. We got pregnant. bought a house, moved into the house, got married in the garden, wife turned 40, and all of that happened in 1 year. All of that
Wow.
happened in a
Yeah.
single year. So it's like the most amazing year, but I also had to wrestle with it heading into 2026 because I was like, how the fuck do you follow that up? So yeah, as I say, it's an interesting topic, but it was like, how is it now just a consolidation, or like how do I get to the end of 2026 and say, right, if I compare this year to last year, do I feel like I've moved forward in my life?
Mm.
Am I setting myself up for failure by comparing the two? So it's been quite interesting. And to your point, where this goes back to, a lot changed in a year. A lot changed in a year.
Oh, yeah. And you're touching on something that goes very deeper. A lot of books study the psychology of winners, and there's this depression that often comes about post like that winning season. In fact, there was this keynote. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was like a multiple Olympian. He had ran track in the Olympics and won multiple medals years in a row. And he told this story at a conference I attended. And he said when he remembers when he was winning, getting the medals, and he would come back home and get off of the airplane, there would be this line of people waiting for him, and they had signs, and it was like a welcome home parade, and everyone cheering for him. And then one year he lost, and he said when he came back and landed at the airport, no one was there, and he had to call an Uber to go home. And he just remembered that empty feeling, and that depression set in, like that contrast of going from this high and making all this big impact and all this momentum to feeling like, oh, no one cares. And that really stuck with me. And I've seen it in my life, and maybe that's why when you asked me the question, maybe that's why I said 2022. Because if I'm being honest, I think back to in the year 2020, I was on this, it was, of course, the COVID year, and I ended up on this magazine cover, Best Self Atlanta. And it was kind of this, I don't want to say it's a fluke, but I probably wouldn't have even responded to the nomination to be on this magazine cover had it not been during the pandemic, and I actually had time to read it and look at it and see what it was about. But I did, and it was this contest, and I ended up winning the cover. So it was like, wow, but like, holy crap, I'm on an actual magazine cover that's being circulated around Atlanta. Actually, here it is right here. It's hanging up in my office.
That's epic.
Yeah. So, but coming off of that high, at first it was like disbelief. It's like, what am I doing on a magazine cover? And then started to get all this attention. And then that led to all this residual business because the article inside of the magazine talked about my life and my business. And it was really a very pivotal moment. But then the next year, it quiets down. Society has a very short memory. So it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares you were on a magazine last year, right? Somebody else is on the cover now. Somebody else is on the cover every year. And now it's like, I had this feeling inside, like, what am I going to do next? What next? And that's what winners get faced with. And you see this all the time with like people who win championships. What's that book by Tim Grover talks a lot about this. The winners, they never stop to celebrate. It's like, okay, what's next? It's kind of like you get addicted to it and you need to keep escalating and going to the next thing. And maybe if I'm being honest, that's been part of my drive. It's like, okay, I was on a magazine cover. Okay, so what? Then I did the Six Pack Dads program, and then I launched a book. Now I'm on my third book, and it's just maybe that's subconsciously this drive that's pushing me to stay relevant and to stay valuable to the people that I serve.
Yeah, it's so interesting because there are lots of ways to kind of slice and dice this. There's something called the honeymoon hangover. So that does come from getting married, going on honeymoon, and coming back, and then realizing, okay, well, life kind of continues like it was. It's like a lot of times we want this fairy tale and to be very different and just perfect, and nothing's always perfect. So people often feel this real honeymoon hangover, but maybe it's well described or best described by, I think, Sir Francis Galton in the, I think it was early 19, I'm trying to think when the date was. I'll butcher the date, but he coined the term, well, he's the one that speaks about regression to the mean. And actually, when he first started speaking about regression to the mean, he called it regression to mediocrity, which is interesting enough. But like in anything, I think there's a mean to our lives. There's an average to our performance across our lives. And sometimes, and regression to the mean, and for those of you that aren't watching, I'm drawing it with my finger. It's basically if you imagine a wave on a graph, a nice wave that goes up and back into a trough and up and back into the trough, and then there's a straight line through that, up and to the right. That's always the regression to the mean. And we can think about it in sports performance. Actually, in sports performance, they call it this Sports Illustrated cover curse. Because if you think about it, there's a breakthrough athlete in a year, most incredible batting average, whatever it is, most touchdowns ever thrown in a season, whatever it may be, make this the cover of Sports Illustrated. And then the next season, they cannot perform to that same level because that was at one of the peaks. They've got to come back down at some stage. And just the same, we've got to realize, and that's why I actually live by this. And now chatting through it, I realize it. I think I'm pretty good at realizing when there's certain peaks, I've got to realize that that's not going to be every day or every month or every year. And then likewise, I have that same mindset when I'm not in the best of spaces or haven't had a great month or a great week, or I'm like, okay, I've got to realize this is going to turn and I'm going to come back out of it because I know what my mean is, my average, and my average is better than this. And interestingly enough, when I speak to teams about this, that's why I so often say that the way to improve your performance or improve your mean, your average, is to worry less about the peaks and more about those troughs. How do we improve our standards, that baseline that we're dropping down to? Because that's what's ultimately going to push the whole thing up. And sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, but that's actually what immediately comes to mind for me. Is I think it's the ability to recognize, and that's how I don't get into the honeymoon hangover kind of mindset, is the ability to recognize that there's always this regression to the mean in something that you're doing, your performance in your job, your athletic performance. Hence the reason that people try and peak at an Olympics, because you cannot maintain that. And I think that's what we try to do in our lives. We try to find peak performance in our life every single day, and that's impossible. You peak for a tournament, you peak for a run, you peak for an event, but then there's going to be regression to the mean again. And it's quite useful just to be aware of that. And yeah, and as I say, in the moments that it allows you to realize, was it Caesar that used to have somebody walking around whispering to him, "You're just a man, you're just a man, you're just a man." But just to realize that when we're at our peak, that's going to come back down at some stage. And again, when we're in our trough, realize that that will turn at some stage again, because we know what we're capable of. Anyway, long-winded story, but that's what jumped out at me.
Winston Churchill famously said, "Success is never permanent and failure is never fatal." It's funny you bring that up because I don't like the word peak, because if I were to say that I'm at a peak, then that inclines that it's downhill from here. So I consciously try to stay away from that word in regarding my own life. And I've heard friends say that. Like I had a good friend of mine, he used to say, "I'm peaking right now." And I said, "Hey man, why are you saying you're peaking?" Because that means it's all downhill. Like, don't say you're peaking. Like, I like to have this perspective, like it only continues to get better and better from here. And I think that there's an art to that. And like, maybe you have to reinvent yourself. If you think about entertainers, whatever, the icons of the music industry, for example, or actors that have had long lasting careers, how do they consistently stay relevant and continue to reinvent themselves? I'm talking about the people who have decades long legacies compared to the one hit wonders of the world. And so I think about that often, especially like if I'm listening to an old song, I think to myself, I wonder whatever happened to this guy who wrote this song back in 1988 that was a big hit, and then you never hear from him again. And it's funny, we had this inside joke in my house because for some reason in my mind, when I think about people who do like a one hit wonder or they were a big actor and they disappear, I envision them working at Home Depot for some reason. I have no idea why. But it's this joke in my house. Oh, he must be working at Home Depot. So I don't know where that came from. But I do often wonder, like, what happened to that person? And maybe some people are at peace with that. Maybe they wanted to get out of the limelight. I have heard those stories. But then I wonder, are there others who have tried to hold on, but to no avail, to no success? So anyway, I struggle with that. But I guess We need to land this plane somewhere here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's almost another topic altogether, but it's an interesting one because once you've achieved the thing, do you think those people that end up at Home Depot, are they the ones that thereafter worked? They were fixated on not losing it. It's like getting ahead in a game and then playing not to lose rather than playing to win. Kind of like England in the Soccer World Cup semi-final against Argentina. They got their lead, and all of a sudden, everything changed in that game, and it felt like they were playing not to lose the game rather than to win the game, and they ended up losing that game. But I wonder if there's something to that. You've been so fixated on it. You get that shot, you get your hit, you on the top of the Billboard 100, whatever it may be, and then you're so fixated on not losing that or finding the next one that I don't know, something changes completely, and you start playing not to lose rather than to try and win a game. I don't know where I'm going with that thought.
No, you're right. And I noticed, I went to a FIFA game, I think it was Brazil versus Norway, and I noticed that once you get a lead, they try to preserve that lead. And it's like, okay, what happens there when you try to preserve it and you're no longer aggressively trying to score? You become a little bit vulnerable to the other team, like really dominating. And that's a great metaphor for life. And really what we're talking about here, because what we're talking about is forward momentum in life, whatever that means for you, whether, for some people that might be getting married, having kids, maybe not. For some people, it may be achieving in business or in sports or whatever arena, whatever that means for you. I think that we all have a desire to hold on to that feeling of forward momentum, of moving up and to the right. And when we feel that slipping, I can't imagine not wanting to get back to that point, no matter who you are, especially if you have any degree of ambition. So how do you flip that switch in your brain to play to win or to reinvent yourself? A speaker that I follow, Diana Kander, she compares Vanilla Ice and Snoop Dogg, who both had hit songs out in the 90s. Ice Ice Baby, and then Snoop had his thing that was out around the same time. And if you fast forward to today, we're in the year 2026, Snoop Dogg is still relevant. Snoop Dogg was at the Olympics. Snoop Dogg is on commercials. Snoop Dogg is everywhere. Where's Vanilla Ice? I don't know where.
Home Depot.
See in my mind, I just pictured him working at Home Depot. But how do you like stay relevant? So I guess if I want to leave our listeners with a king move today, like wherever you are in your journey, in your career, in your life, wherever you feel like there's forward momentum, take a snapshot of that feeling, but don't try to replicate the exact same process that got you there. What the pattern that I see in winners who continually win is that they reinvent themselves in some way. So, I mean, you want to stay authentic, but you can't keep trying to do the same thing because the world keeps moving, tastes, preferences, needs change. So you have to reinvent to stay relevant.
Yeah, I like that. Mine's going to be slightly different. I think in any moment where you feel that you're not where you're wanting to be or you're moving backwards, I think if we live too zoomed in the moment, we can get fixated on, I'm comparing myself to yesterday. But what we need to do is just give yourself some grace and zoom out a little bit. Because if you're comparing your life to yesterday, and yesterday was the most amazing day, maybe you need to compare where you're at to last week, and you'll still find you up and to the right, or last month, and you'll still find you up and to the right. So sometimes just zooming out gives you so much context around the journey that you have already been on and where you've come from, and that can give you a lot of insight and energy to keep the journey moving forward. So sometimes just zoom out rather than getting too close and zooming in.
Great king move. That's a wrap for today's episode of King Moves. Quick favor before we go. If this episode made you think differently or helped you see your next move more clearly, take 30 seconds and leave us a review. It helps the show reach leaders who need these conversations. Remember, in chess, like in business, one right move can change everything.
Take today's action step, make your move, and build momentum. And if you found value in today's episode, share it with someone who's ready for the next breakthrough. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our weekly conversations.
Until next time.